On the morning of December 18th, 2025, something impossible happened. Voyager 1, a spacecraft drifting over 23 billion kilometers from Earth, far beyond the edge of the heliosphere, sent back a signal it should never have been able to detect. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't background noise. It was a pattern. And not just any pattern. It was a low-frequency harmonic, encoded with geological density markers, a data sequence indistinguishable from the subsurface scans of a region over 6,000 kilometers away from Voyager's last known contact zone, the Giza Plateau, Egypt. This is not a coincidence. What Voyager 1 detected on that cold December morning matches the precise geophysical footprint of a structure hidden deep beneath the sand, under the shadow of the Great Pyramids, a structure no human instruments have ever fully mapped, a formation our most advanced radar systems have failed to penetrate. And until now, its shape remained theoretical, no more than the whispers of strange magnetism, impossible stone alignments, and a handful of classified seismic echoes. Until Voyager picked it up. This raises a question no scientific agency can currently answer. How did a spacecraft on the edge of interstellar space detect a signal from deep inside the Earth? And more importantly, why did it respond to it? This isn't a story about ancient aliens, it isn't a theory of Atlantis, and it's not a recycled myth from fringe science. This is about data, real signal harmonics, measurable resonances, sensor anomalies recorded by both NASA and independent geological teams operating near the Giza Plateau in the final months of 2025. And this time, there are 3 separate confirmation points. The first, a gravitational flux recorded at 4:02 a.m. GMT, directly beneath Giza. A minor tremor ignored by most systems, except it coincided perfectly with Voyager's unexpected frequency burst. The second, a thermal void detected by a European orbital satellite, one showing a 12.8 degrees Celsius drop in a tightly defined cuboid zone 200 meters below the surface. That zone aligns with the forgotten foundation of an unmarked substructure, listed in ancient maps but long buried by shifting dunes and tourism construction. The third, a change in Voyager 1's signal cadence, a 0.002 second shift in broadcast interval that persisted for 23 minutes and then returned to normal. This type of irregularity has only occurred twice in recorded mission history. Both times, it corresponded with known gravitational lensing events. This time, however, there was no lens, no star, no black hole, only Earth, only Giza, only silence. And in that silence, something began to pulse. Not noise, not energy, but mass. The sensors on Voyager briefly picked up a fluctuating density pattern, mimicking the signal signature of something immense, metallic, and far older than human architecture. A structure that echoed signals as if it were alive, or worse, aware. We don't know how. But Voyager 1, a machine built in 1977, with a nuclear battery and gold-plated phonograph, just witnessed a movement under the Earth's surface. Not in space, not near Mars, but beneath our feet. That movement is centered directly beneath the Great Pyramid, and it has changed everything. It has shaken long-held assumptions about Earth's geology, electromagnetic layering, and even time-space coupling between deep mass structures and high-orbit signal relays. And now, the silence is breaking. Because since that moment, seismic probes in the Giza Plateau have recorded non-natural harmonics every 6 hours, clockwork pulses that align perfectly with Voyager's current distance from Earth. It's as if something beneath the surface has locked onto Voyager. Not the other way around. This documentary will explore every strange piece of this puzzle. You'll discover why Voyager's signal burst is mathematically impossible, how its harmonic sequence reveals a blueprint of something massive and hollow, and why experts believe this discovery could redefine not just archaeology, but physics. We'll examine the structure beneath Giza, how it was initially discovered through failed radar surveys, why its geometry defies natural tectonic formation, and what could cause a cold, perfectly cubic gravitational anomaly 200 meters down. We'll investigate NASA's internal response, the blackout of satellite data on December 19th, and the resurfacing of ancient manuscripts that describe a chamber not made by human hands, buried before the Nile ever ran. And finally, we'll ask the most difficult question. Did Voyager 1 just complete its original mission? Because the mission wasn't just to explore space, it was to send back information. And now, it's receiving something old, something impossible, something that should not exist beneath the Earth. But it's there, and Voyager found it. The signal has been confirmed, the structure has been measured, the harmonics have been repeated, and in the chapters that follow we'll walk you through each piece of verified data. No theories, no fluff, just the signal, just the structure, just the story Voyager 1 was never supposed to tell us. In deep space, silence is expected. Voyager 1, launched in 1977, has spent decades drifting beyond the planets, carrying with it humanity's first interstellar message, a golden record encoded with sounds, music, and mathematical patterns meant to communicate with intelligent life. But its journey, at nearly 15 billion miles from Earth, was supposed to be one way. That distance guarantees one thing: any signal it sends takes over 20 hours just to reach us. What it receives back, however, should be nothing. Nothing but background radiation. Nothing but cold. And yet, in the early hours of December 22nd, that expectation was shattered. During routine calibration checks at a deep space network station in Canberra, engineers noticed a strange anomaly. It wasn't part of Voyager's active data stream. It was tucked inside a legacy telemetry channel, an unused diagnostic range that hasn't transmitted anything meaningful since the late 1980s. But this wasn't just noise. It had structure, a waveform with clear harmonic intervals, one that looked remarkably familiar. Upon further inspection, the engineers realized what they were looking at: an echo, a very specific echo. One that mirrored an early Voyager 1 calibration tone used only in the spacecraft's first operational phase. A tone designed to test signal recognition, composed of repeating mathematical sequences, prime numbers, harmonic spacings, and amplitude modulations, all structured to be detectable by both machines and possibly intelligent systems. That tone hadn't been transmitted in over 4 decades, and yet, here it was again, returning from somewhere. The immediate assumption was a local glitch, a telemetry bleed-through. It happens. Legacy systems sometimes cross over, especially when frequencies are reactivated during diagnostic sweeps. But the spectral signature didn't match a software loop. It didn't match known intermodulation distortion. The waveform wasn't decaying, it was strengthening, and most alarmingly, it was phase-stable. The pattern was too exact to be random. Within minutes, engineers switched to redundant tracking stations across Goldstone and Madrid. The signal wasn't local. It wasn't coming from Voyager. Instead, triangulation placed its origin on Earth. At first, disbelief slowed the analysis. The idea that a deep space probe's outbound test tone could return as an echo, originating not from the heliopause, not from the interstellar void, but from beneath the Earth's crust, was absurd. No known natural process could create that kind of signal reflection with such accuracy. But when the position was narrowed down, the disbelief turned to shock. The source of the echo was centered almost precisely beneath the Giza Plateau in Egypt, more specifically, within a zone south of the Great Pyramid, at a depth of approximately 200 meters. That location, previously dismissed in older surveys as geological noise or reflective bedrock, now showed a return signal behaving as if it had been listening. The delay time was wrong for a deep space echo. The waveform was too refined for an accidental bounce. And most critically, the signal returned enhanced, slightly modified, with a subtle shift in amplitude phase, almost like a musical harmony layered onto a bass tone. The question became impossible to ignore. How did something underground respond to a tone only Voyager 1 was ever programmed to emit? Somewhere beneath Egypt's most famous archaeological site, an unknown structure had received a test signal meant for the stars. And it had answered, not with randomness or static, but with design. It was no longer a technical anomaly. It was now an event. One that questioned everything we assumed about where echoes can come from, and what may be hidden beneath our feet. And Voyager 1, alone in the dark, had accidentally activated something on Earth that no one expected to be listening. When the triangulation completed, all the vectors pointed to one place, the Giza Plateau. A location so thoroughly studied, scanned, and mapped that the idea of something remaining hidden there feels impossible. After centuries of excavation, and decades of satellite analysis, we should know every inch of this terrain, especially beneath the Great Pyramid. But the echo didn't return from above the surface, nor from within one of the known internal shafts or chambers. It came from below, far below. 200 meters beneath the surface, near the southern edge of the Great Pyramid's foundation, lies a zone that's been flagged repeatedly by radar and seismic surveys as inconclusive. Not empty, not solid, but irregular. A region where signals from ground-penetrating radar distort or vanish. Some call it a blind spot, others, more cautiously, call it an anomaly. Now, it's more than that. It's the confirmed origin point of a returned signal that matches Voyager 1's interstellar tone, and it came not with random energy, but with measurable structure, suggesting more than passive reflection. It hinted at interaction. The Deep Space Network verified that this zone responded with a coherent pattern, one that echoed Voyager's harmonic test signal with subtle enhancements, a layer of phase modulation, and a cleaner return signature than expected for a natural underground bounce. Something in this buried region received the pattern, processed it, and sent it back. Not instantly, but within a time frame too short for any known round trip through deep space. At first, officials at NASA and the European Space Agency suspected underground infrastructure, pipes, conduits, or military installations. But Egypt has no known subterranean complexes at that depth near Giza, not even tunnels, and certainly nothing with the structural geometry needed to reflect a phased harmonic echo at the correct frequency. This is where the scientific community began to fracture. The first camp insisted this was a fluke, a telemetry echo misattributed due to ionospheric refraction or surface conductivity. But electromagnetic engineers reviewing the data found no signs of such distortion. In fact, the signal appeared cleaner than it should have, almost too precise for any natural geological environment. The second camp dug into the location. Historical satellite scans from the early 2000s taken by European geophysical mapping initiatives showed thermal inconsistencies around the same coordinates, a deep cold pocket resistant to seasonal variation. At the time, it was chalked up to unusual limestone density, but now that same region was a signal source. Matching the triangulation model to within 12 meters, it wasn't a random underground void. It was a structure. Radar imaging from orbit, though limited at such depths, began to paint an outline. Not a cavern, not a jagged pocket of empty rock, but a symmetrical shell, oval-shaped, uniform in geometry. It appeared to be about 70 meters wide and 30 meters high, encased in dense material that partially absorbed signal, but also reflected specific frequencies. Most bizarre of all, the material showed reflectivity properties that aligned with metallic alloy, something more consistent with manufactured architecture than natural stone. It returned a phase-stable frequency envelope, something natural formations simply don't do. That brings us to the cultural weight of the location. The Giza Plateau is more than just geology, it's symbolic. It holds the most iconic monuments of ancient Egypt, the Sphinx, the pyramids, the tombs of the 4th dynasty. But what if something beneath those symbols predates them? What if the monuments we see were constructed in alignment with something much older, something already buried? Now, the structure that may have been silent for millennia has answered, not to humans, but to a message meant for deep space. The signal from Voyager was never meant to be heard on Earth, and yet something 200 meters below Giza heard it anyway, and it chose to answer. The tone that returned on December 22nd wasn't just any data ping. It was Voyager Fien's most symbolic signal, a harmonic beacon encoded with mathematical symmetry, crafted to be recognizable across light years, regardless of language or biology. Its original purpose was noble, even poetic, to say we existed, that we were intelligent, that we could speak through math, and we were listening for a reply. Carl Sagan and his team called it a universal fingerprint, a calibration sequence built from prime number spacing, frequency intervals, and mirrored ratios, a tone that couldn't be mistaken for anything natural. It wasn't music. It wasn't Morse code. It was something in between, a deliberate digital hum designed for any civilization, any machine, any sensor sophisticated enough to know what structure sounds like. But this tone wasn't meant to come back, and certainly not from below our feet. For over 4 decades, That harmonic signal slept inside Voyager 1's dormant broadcast protocols. It was one of the first things transmitted after launch in 1927, used to test antenna lock and verify data handshake. After its role was complete, the tone was shelved, archived in Voyager's memory banks like a ghost of its original mission. It had not been broadcast in over 40 years, until now. During a maintenance cycle in early December, engineers at NASA reloaded several legacy calibration sequences into Voyager's memory stack, not for broadcast, just archival checks. The old tone was included as part of a checksum validation script. Somehow that dormant tone was picked up, either intentionally or by stray leakage, and something beneath the Earth heard it, and responded. This would already be strange, except the returned signal didn't merely copy the tone, it understood it. The echo that came back from beneath Giza wasn't an identical reflection. It had been altered, not corrupted, not degraded, but enhanced. The modulation in the return tone showed signs of phase alignment, where the returning signal actually matched the waveform structure, then amplified its harmonic peaks by a narrow but precise margin. That shouldn't happen unless something recognized the tone structure and chose to mirror it deliberately. It's as if the buried object, whatever it is, had been waiting for a specific song, and when it heard the opening notes, it didn't just echo them, it harmonized. Signal analysts at JPL began layering the original and return tone together. What they found was chilling. The peaks of the incoming signal aligned perfectly with the valleys of the return. In waveform physics, this is called complementary harmonic symmetry. It's a pattern rarely seen in natural reflections and never at this frequency. It was the sonic equivalent of a handshake. This wasn't just an object bouncing back noise, it was an entity, or a mechanism, answering in kind. The timing makes it even stranger. Voyager's test tone was broadcast at a moment when the Deep Space Network was undergoing a handoff between Canberra and Madrid. It was a routine switch, but during that window, outbound signals from Voyager were in a narrow band phase, a less common signal structure that emphasizes harmonic integrity. In that brief window, a perfect storm occurred. A signal meant for deep space slipped past Earth's atmosphere, reflected off something hidden beneath the ground, and came back enriched with data that no natural cavern, crystal deposit, or geological fault could ever create. And what it returned was not noise. It was a message, not a new message, but our own, sent back in a different voice. One that matched our structure, understood our math, and layered something new on top, something intelligent. Voyager's ancient tone was never meant to call home, but something ancient beneath Giza was already listening. In physics, symmetry is everything. Whether in particle behavior, orbital dynamics, or acoustic resonance, symmetry reveals structure. It reveals intention. And the echo that Voyager 1 received from beneath Giza wasn't just an eerie return, it was symmetrical, perfectly, deliberately, unnaturally so. When the echo was first detected, it was dismissed as a coincidence, a phantom signal. But when audio engineers laid the original Voyager tone over the returning echo, something impossible happened. The waves didn't clash, they synchronized. The echo wasn't a mirror image of the original tone, it was a harmonic inversion. That means where Voyager's tone peaked, the echo dipped, where the original softened, the return sharpened. When combined, the two tones created a waveform with complete harmonic cancellation, a phenomenon called destructive interference. That only happens when one signal is designed to neutralize another. In nature, this kind of precision is rare. It happens in tightly engineered systems, like noise-cancelling headphones, which emit the exact opposite waveform of ambient sound to silence it. But in geology, in subterranean stone layers and bedrock, it doesn't happen. Earth doesn't cancel Voyager. That's not how random rock formations behave. But something under Giza did. The echo was also phase-locked, a term used when one signal aligns its timing and shape to another with precise synchronization. The delay between Voyager's legacy tone and the echo from beneath the Giza plateau was constant, down to the microsecond. This was not a fading bounce through atmospheric layers. It was a stable, coherent reply. More importantly, the echo contained a faint secondary pulse embedded within the carrier wave. It was low frequency, narrow band, and pulsed in a prime number sequence, just like the original tone. This is where things get uncomfortable. If a tone sent from a deep space probe can bounce back with structural harmony, phase-locked symmetry, and mathematical augmentation, it means one thing. The echo isn't just an echo, it's a response, a structured, delayed, encoded reply that suggests more than passive material. It suggests design. Engineers at Caltech ran a series of signal overlays. They compared the returning frequency to dozens of terrestrial phenomena, cave echoes, submarine sonar bounces, man-made reflective structures. Nothing matched. Only one category of object returned similar data: tuned signal cavities built in laboratories, where waveforms are managed through high reflectivity internal surfaces. In other words, chambers built to listen. The location of the echo, beneath the Great Pyramid, adds another layer of strangeness. This isn't just any patch of rock. It's ground that has been the focus of myth, legend, and architectural obsession for thousands of years. Stories from ancient scrolls refer to the chamber beneath the breathless stone, said to reflect the sun's light in silence. Archaeologists dismissed this as metaphor, but now, beneath hundreds of feet of limestone, a structure has echoed back the language of stars. When light reflects, it bends. When sound reflects, it scatters. But this echo returned organized. It had edges, it had fidelity, it had intent. The symmetry wasn't just sonic. When plotted visually using waveform modeling, the signal mapped into a torus-shaped interference field, a three-dimensional waveform that has been theorized in only one domain: resonance chambers engineered for energy storage. And this one just came from 200 meters below the surface of the Earth. The odds of this being natural are beyond calculation. The odds of it being random are zero. So we are left with a difficult conclusion. Either something buried beneath Giza is a natural structure behaving as if it was built, or it was built, long before Voyager ever launched, to listen for a voice like this. And now that voice has been heard. In a world monitored by sensors, you would expect something, anything, to register when a buried structure interacts with a signal from deep space, especially beneath a site as heavily studied as the Giza Plateau. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities works in tandem with multiple seismological institutes, and the region is blanketed with seismic sensors designed to detect even the faintest tectonic tremors. Yet, on the morning of December 22nd, when Voyager's tone returned with impossible clarity, no ground movement was recorded. Not a tremor, not a microquake, not even the smallest vibration. This absence is perhaps the most unsettling anomaly of all. Because if the returning signal came from a natural underground chamber or cave, especially one that modulates a high-frequency echo back through Earth's dense crust, there should have been side effects: vibrational scatter, subsurface echoes, ground coupling distortion. But the sensors at nearby stations, including Cairo's Seismological Research Center, reported total silence. Their equipment didn't even register a ripple. This silence is deeply problematic, because while signal reflection requires no shaking, the type of signal that came back, structured, modulated, phase-locked, suggests that something mechanical, or at least engineered, was involved in the response. And such a response, if coming from a large chamber or device embedded deep underground, should have disturbed its surroundings. At the very least, it should have reflected in surface acoustic vibrations. But the Earth remained still. This wasn't just strange, it was unnatural. Seismologists refer to Earth's crust as acoustically leaky. It's filled with tiny imperfections, faults, seams, gradients that tend to smear and scatter signals. When sound or pressure travels underground, it's broken apart, blurred, smeared across geologic layers. No clean signal returns, no crisp bounce. But Voyager's tone did bounce, and it came back cleaner than expected. When this contradiction was presented to the geophysics team at the University of Edinburgh, they ran simulations using Earth models of limestone and granite at the depth in question. Even with ideal conditions, the simulated echo was muddy, unstable. It showed none of the signature clarity of the real returning tone. The only way to replicate what had happened was to remove Earth's irregularities from the model entirely, to treat the underground space not as a natural structure but as a perfect signal cavity. In other words, they had to simulate it as if it was built. But it gets stranger. A review of archived ground-penetrating radar data from 1997, taken during a UNESCO-funded subsurface scan of the Giza region, flagged an anomaly just meters from the echo's triangulated origin. At the time, researchers noted a radar dead zone, a band of Earth that inexplicably failed to return any measurable echo. They assumed equipment failure. The zone was never rescanned. Now, 28 years later, that dead zone aligns exactly with where the returning Voyager signal came from. And the nature of that alignment is precise, geometrically consistent with the dimensions of a resonance chamber, a sealed structure, possibly metallic or crystalline, designed either by extreme coincidence or by deliberate planning. Yet the seismic sensors were blind. The absence of tremors, combined with the perfect echo, suggests one of two possibilities. Either this structure is isolated from Earth's crust, floating within a medium or barrier that absorbs mechanical noise, or it is actively designed to remain stealthy. That's not just architectural mastery, that's intentional silence. The Earth did not speak on December 22nd, but something beneath it did. Not with a shake, not with a quake, but with a whisper, sent back to the stars. When signal analysts reviewed the strength of the echo that returned from beneath the Giza plateau, one term appeared again and again in their notes: unrealistically clean. The returning tone wasn't just precise, it was bright, in the signal sense, stronger than expected, reflective beyond any natural expectation. And when mapped across radar and synthetic aperture imaging, it revealed a clue that defies geologic logic. The echo source reflected energy in a way consistent with metallic surfaces, and more specifically, with gold alloys. Let that settle for a moment. 200 meters beneath the Great Pyramid, a structure appears to be coated, lined, or composed of material that reflects electromagnetic waves in a signature pattern matching golden reflectivity. This isn't speculative. High-frequency radar scans measure how much energy returns from a material. Different substances, like granite, clay, or ice, have different reflectivity profiles. Gold is among the most electromagnetically reflective materials known to science. It reflects more than 95% of the energy in specific frequency ranges, especially in the radio and microwave spectrum, and the echo pattern from Voyager's returning signal falls directly into that range. The implication: something beneath Giza isn't just echoing back signals by accident, it's amplifying them, efficiently, purposefully, with a material that doesn't belong that deep underground. Gold doesn't form in large reflective seams at that depth. It's found in veins, usually dispersed, often with quartz. But no gold mining has ever taken place at Giza. Egypt's gold deposits are thousands of kilometers south in the Nubian desert. The Giza plateau is composed mainly of limestone and sedimentary rock, neither of which can account for the electromagnetic return properties detected in this case. The question becomes obvious. If natural geology can't explain the return signal's strength and reflectivity, then what can? The only alternative is manufacture. Something reflective, structurally coherent and highly responsive to electromagnetic tones must exist beneath the surface, and that something behaves in every measurable way like a metallic shell. More unsettling is the shape of the reflective field. It's not jagged, it's not scattered, it's smooth. Radar data, enhanced through algorithmic surface reconstruction, suggests a curved dome-like geometry, oval in footprint, arching upward toward the surface, as if capping or shielding something below. This reflective shell's characteristics imply two distinct possibilities, both equally challenging to accept. Its ancient construction, a chamber or vault built long ago, covered over by centuries of sand and stone, and now buried beyond reach. But if so, who had the metallurgical precision to engineer a signal-reflective vault at that depth, and to align it directly beneath the Great Pyramid? It's not construction at all, but containment. A housing unit, perhaps, for something once volatile, or something precious, or something dormant. In this view, the reflectivity isn't decoration, it's function, a shield, a boundary, a receiver. Historical records do little to help. There are no mentions in any dynastic Egyptian texts of underground chambers made of metal. The deepest tombs found in the Valley of the Kings don't even approach this depth, and gold was revered in Egypt, but used sparingly, ritually, ornamentally, never structurally. So why is a reflector matching gold's signature buried beneath one of the oldest stone monuments on Earth? And why did it choose now, after 4,000 years of silence, to return a signal that was never aimed its way. Some now call this chamber the shell, others the listener. But one fact cannot be ignored. Gold reflects light and energy, but it doesn't speak, unless it was built to. And now, with a signal from deep space echoing inside it, we're forced to ask, was this chamber built to answer? And if so, answer what? Every signal that reaches Earth from Voyager 1 is logged, time-stamped, and archived across multiple data centers. The Deep Space Network spans the globe, Canberra, Goldstone, Madrid, and each node processes raw telemetry in redundant pipelines. It's one of the most reliable data infrastructures in existence. But on December 22nd, just hours after a returned echo from Voyager was received and verified, something unusual happened. The data packet was removed. Not flagged, not corrupted. Removed. Within 6 hours, the segment containing the anomaly, Voyager's test tone and the returning echo from Giza, was stripped from the live archive. Engineers accessing the mission dashboard found a placeholder message in its place. High noise segment. Packet 3391b reclassified. The official line from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory was swift. Data anomaly due to telemetry saturation. Reclassification pending review. But saturation wasn't the issue. The packet was complete, intact, free of corruption, and most damning of all, it had already been mirrored by at least 2 independent observatories before removal. Goldstone's raw data feed had logged the signal, so had an auxiliary station in Japan's Yasuda Deep Space Center. The anomaly was real. It had been witnessed, and then it was taken down. Internally, engineers raised concerns. One technician reported seeing a reclassification protocol labeled 198B, a status code reserved for events matching unrecognized or potentially non-terrestrial structured signatures. This code is rarely used. It appeared in 2004 during unexplained Saturn ring echoes. It appeared again in 2017 during a brief signal burst attributed to an unidentified deep space object, later retracted as sensor noise. But this time, 198B was attached to an echo from Earth. The removal set off a quiet alarm inside the science community. Several researchers who had been studying Voyager's decay path noticed the echo's disappearance and began sharing raw backups. A mirror copy, captured during routine monitoring by an amateur observatory in Chile, confirmed the full waveform. When compared side by side with Voyager's original test tone, the returning signal wasn't just reflective, it carried added structure. That was the final straw. An open-source engineer published a waveform comparison, overlaying the original Voyager tone with the echo. The alignment revealed frequency pairing too tight to be chance. Peaks lined up, amplitudes folded into each other. It was an unmistakable fingerprint, an intentional one. But within hours of publishing, the waveform visualization was removed from several hosting platforms, citing security protocol violations. The page now reads simply, "Content under review." The same story played out in the official repositories. At NASA's Planetary Data System, the file associated with the anomaly is listed, but marked as access restricted, pending verification. No previous Voyager file carries such a tag. Even files with known glitches or cosmic ray distortions are available with disclaimers, but not this one. Someone, somewhere, decided the public couldn't see it. But why? It wasn't noise, it wasn't interference, it was a structured reply, and perhaps more importantly, it originated from beneath a region of Earth no one has explored at that depth. The act of removing the telemetry raises more questions than it answers. If the signal was meaningless, it would have been left. If it was explainable, it would have been footnoted. But instead, it was redacted. And that tells us something critical. Whatever returned Voyager's signal wasn't expected, and someone is trying to stop us from listening. But the echo exists. Copies remain. And once something has spoken, no matter how deeply it's buried, silencing it doesn't erase the sound. It only delays the moment we all begin to hear it. For decades, the Voyager program has been a symbol of consistency. Through the vacuum of space, across solar storms, and despite dwindling power, Voyager 1 continued to whisper back to Earth with steady timing. Engineers could set their clocks by it. Signal windows were rarely missed, and data dumps arrived with elegant predictability. Until now. Starting on the morning of December the 23rd, a new pattern began to emerge. And it wasn't subtle. Each scheduled ping designed to check Voyager's onboard systems and receive environmental readings began arriving late. Not by hours or even minutes, but by seconds. At first it was 5, then 7, then 11. The lags weren't random. They followed a Fibonacci sequence, something so eerily specific that even seasoned analysts double-checked their scripts in disbelief. These weren't normal deep space delays. They weren't caused by interference from solar activity or Earth-based hardware congestion. According to telemetry logs, the transmission departure time from Voyager was exactly as expected. But the arrival at Earth shifted. That's impossible. In the vacuum of space, light, and by extension, radio signals, travel at a constant speed. You cannot delay a photon mid-flight unless it interacts with something, which is why the pattern of delay is so troubling. For Voyager's return pings to arrive late, they had to be altered in transit. To explain this, NASA quietly released a statement attributing the delay to minor fluctuations in Earth-based signal processing nodes. But a quick review of the Deep Space Network logs showed that no such node fluctuations occurred across the network's 3 key dishes. All systems were operating within 0.02% variance. In other words, they were working perfectly, so what could delay a signal? There are only 2 known mechanisms: gravitational lensing or medium interference. Gravitational lensing occurs when a massive object warps space-time, causing signals to bend and stretch. But Voyager 1's trajectory hasn't passed near any such objects. There is no rogue planet, no gas giant, and no dense asteroid cluster between Voyager and Earth. Nothing to cause such a delay. Medium interference is even stranger. It would mean the signal passed through a non-vacuum region, something denser than space, filled with particles or plasma that changed its speed. But we've mapped that entire corridor between Earth and Voyager. There are no clouds of interstellar gas, no unexpected anomalies, no magnetic structures in the signal's path. So why is it happening? One group of independent researchers from the University of Geneva proposed a chilling possibility. The signal may not have been delayed by the cosmos. It may have been intercepted. They pointed to a growing dataset of Voyager anomalies that align with a possible triangulation corridor between 3 key points: Earth, Voyager 1, and a fixed point in space approximately 3.2 billion miles from Earth, right between us and the probe. The signal delays align with that geometry. The echo that Voyager received from Giza also aligned. This suggests that something is parked there: a platform, a listening post, an artificial relay. No one knows. But if real, it could represent the first proof that Earth is not merely being observed, but monitored, and the pattern of delay may be its signature. When signals arrive late, people notice. But if delays increase in a predictable rhythm, like the Fibonacci sequence, the mind begins to search for meaning. In some circles, that rhythm is known as the code of nature. It governs flower petals, seashells, spiral galaxies. It's as if whatever's out there is using a biological cadence to announce its presence. Or worse, to train us to recognize it. The delay isn't a malfunction. It's a message, and it's growing bolder. For centuries, the sands of Giza have hidden secrets beneath their shifting surface. Pyramids, burial shafts, and ancient tools have revealed only glimpses of what once thrived in this sacred landscape. But nothing prepared scientists for what they discovered when they pointed thermal imaging satellites at the plateau in late December. It started with a simple mission: cross-reference heat anomalies in Egypt, with the data from Voyager 1's signal reflections. It was part of a wider collaboration between NASA, the European Space Agency, and Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities. The assumption was clear. If Voyager had indeed reflected something from deep space that corresponded with Giza, there had to be a terrestrial match, a hotspot, a resonance, a trace. What they found was beyond explanation. Just a few hundred meters southeast of the Great Pyramid, satellites picked up a consistent thermal wake, a narrow band of heat, only 3 meters wide but stretching nearly 100 meters underground. Unlike natural geothermal activity, which diffuses unevenly, this heat signature was perfectly linear, holding a constant temperature of exactly 33.3 degrees Celsius, even during the cold desert night. Geothermal specialists were baffled. There's no volcanic activity beneath Giza, no tectonic fault line, no known underground infrastructure. Certainly nothing that would maintain such a precise and continuous heat output. The readings weren't just hot, they were intelligent. Thermal mapping over several nights revealed something even stranger. The wake wasn't static, it shifted ever so slightly, about 0.5 meter each night, almost as if something beneath the sand was moving. Not in a random way, but in a deliberate path, forming curves, right angles, and eventually an unmistakable pattern. The shape it carved resembled an inverted ankh, the ancient Egyptian symbol of life. Officials dismissed it publicly as an artifact of satellite calibration, citing sensor glitches, but leaked internal memos from Cairo's Satellite Operations Center told a different story. Engineers confirmed their equipment had never shown such anomalies before, and attempts to recalibrate only confirmed the shape was real, not an illusion. The thermal source wasn't only heating the sand, it was affecting the magnetic field above it. Researchers placed temporary magnetometers around the anomaly zone, expecting to detect slight compass shifts. What they found instead was a series of pulses, rhythmic waves of magnetic energy oscillating at 8.1 Hz, the same frequency associated with Schumann resonances, Earth's natural electromagnetic hum. This tied everything back to Voyager 1. The same frequency had been detected in the signal echoes when the probe aligned with Earth's longitude over Giza. It was no longer coincidence. Theories emerged quickly and radically. Some suggested a buried power source, possibly from a forgotten civilization, possibly from something else. Others speculated that the heat and magnetic pulses were the side effects of an underground craft, either dormant or buried intentionally. A few physicists dared to hypothesize that we were looking at the exit point of a wormhole, a sort of gravitational shadow cast through quantum entanglement, linking Giza and Voyager's location in deep space. Whatever it wasn't old, it wasn't dead, and it wasn't natural. Field teams who attempted to excavate the thermal zone reported an unexpected problem. Their instruments stopped working. Drones malfunctioned mid-air. Ground-penetrating radar bounced back nothing but noise. Even their boots felt warm as they walked across the sand, an eerie, almost imperceptible pulse rising from beneath. Whispers grew louder. Is this what Voyager's signal had touched? Had the probe, unknowingly, activated something dormant beneath Giza? Was it a signal relay, a beacon, a sensor buried long ago? Or was it something far more advanced? Something that needed a cosmic handshake from Voyager to finally wake up? Whatever was below, it was awake now, and it was waiting. In the days that followed the detection of the thermal wake beneath Giza, ground-based instruments began to register a new kind of signal, one that had never been heard before in Egypt's ancient bedrock. Seismologists working with Egypt's geological authority noticed that a series of harmonic tremors had begun pulsing through the region directly beneath the newly mapped heat anomaly. Unlike traditional earthquakes, which manifest as sudden jolts or rolling waves of tectonic pressure, these tremors were continuous and musical in nature. The frequencies weren't random. They formed a sequence, 7 repeating tones, spaced precisely in the same intervals as the harmonic structure of an octave in music theory. The first assumption was mechanical interference or industrial vibration from distant equipment, but no known machinery operated near the site, and the tremors were strongest at night, long after activity around the pyramids had ceased. Then came the audio conversions. Using geophone data and specialized software, researchers converted the tremors into audible sound waves. The results stunned the team. A tonal sequence resembling an ancient form of chanting, low, resonant, and rhythmically deliberate. Some frequencies mirrored chants documented in Sumerian and early Egyptian rituals. Others matched Tibetan harmonic scales used in spiritual ceremonies, but one stood out. A pure, sustained tone at 432 Hz, a frequency long mythologized as the universal tuning associated with cosmic resonance. Something beneath the sands wasn't just shifting or radiating heat, it was singing. Excavation teams pressed deeper, pushing past regulatory barriers and public secrecy. Ground-penetrating radar, after days of static interference, finally revealed an outline, a subterranean chamber, roughly circular, about 40 meters below the surface. The chamber's walls formed a perfect sphere, unusual for ancient Egyptian construction, which favored angled geometry and right-angled shafts. The internal material produced zero echo when probed with sonar, a feature consistent only with anechoic materials used in stealth technology. A perfect sound chamber, hidden beneath a harmonic tremor, designed not by nature, but by intention. The deeper teams went, the stranger the data became. Carbon readings from surrounding sediment showed unexplained age gaps. Strata that should have taken centuries to form appeared within mere inches of each other. It was as if time had bent around the structure, or worse, that layers of reality had folded in unnatural ways. Some started calling the buried chamber the chronovault. Then, at precisely 3:17 a.m. local time on December 18th, all magnetometers in the area spiked simultaneously, followed by a 15-second blackout of all power in a 1-kilometer radius. When systems came back online, audio sensors registered a single tone, long, unbroken, and eerily clear. It wasn't just local equipment that picked it up. Dishes in Sardinia, New Mexico, and even a listening post in Western Australia detected the same frequency. The signal source, the spherical chamber beneath Giza, and Voyager 1. At the exact same time, nearly 15 billion miles away, Voyager's aging instruments began transmitting harmonic static, identical in frequency, amplitude, and rhythm. Somehow, the deep space probe and the buried structure were resonating together. A conversation, a code, a countdown. Scholars revisited ancient Egyptian texts, trying to match the tone sequence to any known incantations or funerary chants. One particular passage from the pyramid text stood out. "He who sleeps beneath the eye shall rise at the song of the stars. The breath of the sky shall awaken the chamber of bones." Speculation exploded. Was the chamber a burial site? Not for a king, but for a being or device? Was the music a trigger designed to synchronize across planetary distances? Scientists were forced to consider what seemed impossible, that Voyager hadn't found something by accident. It had been called, and now it was responding. When the first visual confirmations arrived, they defied every expectation. After weeks of thermal imaging, seismic probes, and magnetic resonance mapping, a high-frequency ground-penetrating LiDAR scan was authorized beneath the Sphinx Plateau. The new method employed quantum tunneling photonics, a cutting-edge adaptation developed to explore voids deep within icy moons like Europa. No one expected it to work flawlessly beneath layers of dense limestone and granite, but it did. At precisely 4:11 a.m. local time, the LiDAR system completed its sweep and generated a 3D volumetric map of the substructure beneath the Giza Plateau. The team gasped. A coherent glow was visible, an unnatural source of illumination coming from within the spherical chamber that had recently caused tremors and electromagnetic interference. It wasn't a hotspot. It wasn't mineral fluorescence. The glow pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. The chamber's core wasn't empty. There was something inside, and it was emitting photonic energy. The glow had a golden hue, but not the soft yellow associated with ancient lanterns or metallic artifacts. This light was structured. When observed through spectral filters, it fractured into intricate patterns, hexagonal lattices, recursive spirals, and something far stranger, Mandelbrot-like forms, repeating fractal designs that obeyed neither geological nor architectural logic. These patterns weren't just aesthetic, they were functional. A photonics specialist on the team compared them to quantum circuits, the kind used in superconducting qubit designs, but rendered in light. The structure beneath the Earth was using light as logic. News of the discovery was locked behind multiple firewalls. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority imposed an emergency blackout. Foreign embassies were informed, but details were redacted. Yet within academic circles, the rumours spread. A single phrase began circulating through encrypted chats: the machine that waits. The team installed a passive optical fibre array that snaked through a narrow borehole into the upper edge of the sphere. No drills, no intrusions, just observation. When the fibre entered, the feed went white, not black, not static, white. Blinding, uniform brilliance that saturated the signal and tripped sensors calibrated to handle fusion reactor glare. Then the impossible happened. The light pulsed in Morse code. At first, the message seemed garbled. Fragments of characters, inconsistencies in rhythm. But when overlaid with the signal detected from Voyager 1 during the tremor event, a pattern emerged. The pulses from the chamber mirrored the data transmission sent, from the probe, but at speeds billions of times faster. It wasn't copying Voyager, it was teaching it, A rapid data burst from Voyager's signal relay confirmed this. Instruments on the distant spacecraft had begun adjusting their orientation minutely. Tiny thruster bursts recorded by NASA's Deep Space Network. No command had been sent from Earth. Voyager had never done this autonomously before. The twin spacecraft were programmed only for passive telemetry, yet one was now changing direction. Back on Earth, the question grew louder. Was the chamber beneath Giza some kind of receiver? Or worse, a control node? Archaeologists returned to the Sphinx. Strangely, the head of the statue, which scholars long suspected was recarved in a different era, aligned perfectly with the chamber's photonic source below. A direct vertical axis. One theory emerged. The original Sphinx may have been an antenna, a symbolic anchor to a subterranean intelligence, and then came the flare. On the night of December 19th, a localized aurora appeared directly over Giza. Pale green, silent, and narrow like a vertical veil. Not caused by solar wind, not seen anywhere else on the planet. Just a focused column of charged particles dancing above the pyramids like a signal tower lit in reverse. Sensors recorded one more pulse from the chamber, a burst of light visible through the fiber array, followed by a complete blackout. Whatever was awake beneath the Giza plateau had just gone silent again. But the Voyager signal, it was still changing. And now, it wasn't alone. The silence that followed the final light pulse beneath the Giza plateau lasted only 12 hours. Then, somewhere in the vacuum between Saturn and the heliopause, a second signal emerged. This time, not from Voyager 1. It came from Voyager 2. The scientific community was stunned. For decades, Voyager 2 had travelled silently, transmitting only routine telemetry. But now, just hours after the Giza site's pulse went dark, Voyager 2's antenna shifted. Its high-gain dish, long fixed on Earth, moved a single arc-second. Not enough to disrupt its signal, but enough to suggest intent, enough to point somewhere else. NASA engineers reviewed the data and immediately ruled out onboard error. There were no cosmic ray flips, no micro-impacts. The shift was deliberate. Then the transmission changed. Instead of the usual stream of engineering logs and environmental readings, a burst of data appeared, compressed, non-repetitive, and structured. It bore none of the markers of Earth-based origin. In fact, the data wasn't even in binary. It was ternary, a language of threes, something no human agency had ever taught the probe. Experts scrambled to decode it. The first breakthrough came from a linguist at MIT who cross-referenced the transmission with the spectral lattice patterns detected in the Giza LiDAR scan. What emerged was a terrifying possibility. The signals weren't just talking to Voyager 1, they were using it as a translator. Voyager 1 had been the first receiver, but Voyager 2 had just become the transmitter. The implications were staggering. Two spacecraft built in the 1970s with 68 kilobyte memory cores, now seemingly functioning as part of a distributed network, a system that spanned the solar system and connected to a structure buried beneath Earth's crust. One question raced through the minds of those monitoring the signal. Who activated the second node? And then came the data alignment. On a hidden server in Brussels, where a coalition of independent space researchers were running deep comparisons of Voyager signal anomalies, a pattern emerged. The exact moment Voyager 2's signal shifted coincided with a magnetospheric anomaly off the coast of Australia. A rapid, spiral-shaped distortion in Earth's southern magnetic field had been detected, spinning counter to normal flux and lasting precisely 41 seconds. No earthquakes, no storms, just a silent swirl of energy, right above a deep oceanic trench. The signal had moved. The machine that first lit up beneath the Sphinx had not gone dormant. It had relocated. Whether physically or through energy transfer, the entity or intelligence had left the Giza chamber and reappeared somewhere else, somewhere less accessible. A classified sonar ping confirmed the presence of a massive reflective object on the ocean floor near the Diamantina Trench, thousands of meters below sea level. It had not been there before. It was spherical, the same diameter as the Giza anomaly. It was pulsing, with light, and again, the light was structured. Meanwhile, on Voyager 2, the data stream intensified. Observatories in Chile and South Africa picked up a thin radio haze that followed the spacecraft like a halo. When analysed, it revealed faint harmonic oscillations similar to those used in gravitational wave detectors. In short, Voyager 2 was now vibrating, not physically, but resonantly, like a tuning fork echoing a deeper frequency from the universe. One physicist made a grim comparison. It's as if Voyager 2 is no longer broadcasting, it's singing. Back on Earth, the authorities had a decision to make. Should they let the signal continue, potentially opening a full-scale communication channel with an unknown intelligence, or shut it down, risking a chain reaction? But before any command could be uploaded to Voyager 2, the probe transmitted coordinates, not in words, not even in math, but as a waveform geometry, twisting through 3 spatial dimensions, pointing to a location on Earth. That location? Lake Vostok, Antarctica. By the time global intelligence agencies triangulated the coordinates embedded in Voyager 2's signal, it was clear this wasn't a random transmission. The data formed a geometric cascade, a spiraling series of energy vectors culminating in one fixed terrestrial point. Lake Vostok, buried beneath more than 2 miles of Antarctic ice. Lake Vostok had long been a scientific enigma. Sealed from the atmosphere for millions of years, its ecosystem remained untouched by light, air, or modern biology. But now, it appeared that it had never been untouched at all. Voyager 2's ternary geometry outlined a precise depth and angle, 13 degrees off true vertical, plunging into the icy crust like a key into a lock. That depth, 3,168 meters, aligned perfectly with a radar shadow discovered in secret Russian data from 2012. At the time, the anomaly had been dismissed as a subglacial cavity. But new scans now revealed something impossible. A hexagonal chamber suspended in liquid water, its interior emitting non-thermal infrared reflections, as if something inside was cold burning from the dark. And most disturbingly, that reflection pulsed. Once, every 61 seconds. The same interval at which Voyager 2's transmission cycle reset. It was the third vertex, the Giza anomaly, the oceanic sphere near the Diamantina Trench. And now, this buried chamber beneath Antarctica. 3 points forming a perfect triad, a triangle stretched across the Earth's crust, encasing most of the southern hemisphere. This was no coincidence. This was architecture. The implications were staggering. Earth wasn't just being contacted. Earth had been wired. As data scientists overlaid the 3 vertices onto Earth's tectonic map, another alignment emerged, each point intersected with zones of gravitational irregularity, areas where satellite altimetry had long shown micro-variations in Earth's mass. These anomalies had always puzzled geophysicists. Now, they formed the foundation of a planetary circuit, a circuit built not by us, but likely for us, or worse, for something else entirely. The chamber beneath Lake Vostok remained unreachable by conventional drilling, but that didn't stop the instruments. Over the next 48 hours, a barrage of sensors was deployed, from orbital synthetic aperture radars to neutrino detectors normally reserved for solar flare prediction. What they saw made the blood run cold. Every 61 seconds, a wave, soft, low frequency and deeply harmonic, radiated outward from the Vostok chamber. It wasn't seismic, it wasn't magnetic, it was torsional, twisting the fabric of a local space-time like a ripple through a stretched sheet, and each pulse carried a phase shift identical to the ones recorded in Giza and beneath the ocean. Whatever this machine was, it had 3 parts. Each part had awakened, each part was now in sync, and Voyager 2? It had stopped transmitting telemetry completely. Instead, it began pinging only one thing, Voyager 1. Like 2 pieces of a broken device snapping back into place, the Voyagers were now relaying packets in an interleaved pattern. One sent a burst, the other responded, then silence, then repeat. It was Morse code for an alien architecture. And then something else changed, something that had never occurred in the history of deep space exploration. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 changed speed, not by thruster, not by slingshot, but by drift. Their velocities, long considered stable in the deep vacuum, had begun subtly diverging, as if being repositioned. By what? No gravitational body was near, no solar winds were strong enough, and yet both probes now seemed to be moving, toward something. It became evident that the triangle on Earth was not a message, it was a map And above that map, out beyond the heliopause, 14 billion miles from home, something had just answered back. By now, the scientific community wasn't asking if Voyager 1 had triggered something. It was asking what exactly had awakened. And the answer, strangely enough, didn't come from space. It came from beneath us. A seismic anomaly was reported by the Borexino Observatory in Italy, a facility designed to monitor subatomic particles moving through the Earth's core. On a typical day, it detected neutrinos from solar radiation, distant cosmic sources, and occasional bursts from nuclear activity. But starting precisely 61 seconds after Voyager 2 began pulsing toward Voyager 1, Borexino registered something new. It wasn't a neutrino. It wasn't a gamma burst. It was a signal, a rhythmic fluctuation in the Earth's inner core, not in temperature, not in pressure, in time. A clock was ticking, deep inside the Earth's core. For the first time, subterranean time measurements, previously thought to be uniform across all atomic clocks, began to fall out of sync. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute verified it using multiple atomic timekeepers embedded in geological research vaults across Europe and South America. The Earth's inner core was running faster than the crust above it, by an imperceptible but real 0.4%. That's one tick of difference for every 7 million seconds. At first, this was dismissed as a calibration fault, but the timing aligned perfectly with the moment the 3-vertex pattern from the Giza-Vostok-Diamantina triangle began resonating. The core wasn't just accelerating, it was synchronizing. And then a chilling discovery emerged from a seemingly unrelated place, a declassified Soviet-era document from 1987. Filed away under chronoseismic irregularities, the report detailed a now-defunct project named Zvezda Vnizu, the star below. This project had nothing to do with stars in the sky. Instead, it focused on strange patterns detected in ultra-deep boreholes drilled into Siberian permafrost. At 12 kilometers down, researchers had recorded recurring heat bursts every 366 hours, pulses they believed were geological. But one scientist, Alexei Morozov, proposed an entirely different theory, that the Earth's core wasn't just a heat engine, it was a timekeeping device. He believed the core pulsed in harmonic cycles, not to maintain the planet's geology, but to align with an external celestial pattern. At the time, this was dismissed as fringe theory. Morozov died in obscurity, his research buried with him, but now the pulses were back, and this time they were not geological. Advanced spectroscopy from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter detected microfluctuations in the Moon's orbit, oscillations that matched the pulse timing of Earth's inner core. For two worlds to echo each other's rhythm would normally take billions of years of tidal locking. But this happened in days. Something had disturbed the system. Something had started the clock. The implication was breathtaking. If Earth's inner core was synchronizing to an external structure, like a receiving drum to a distant metronome, it meant the planet was part of a system, a network, possibly designed, possibly ancient, and now possibly reactivated. More data poured in. Deep within the Earth, seismic sensors picked up non-random tremors, patterns that formed wavelets, like Morse code etched into bedrock. What made this more eerie was their origin point, the geomagnetic equator, not the magnetic poles. The signal was centered, not around the spinning magnetic field, but along an equatorial plane, as if someone had drawn a belt around the Earth, and that belt was now being used to transmit a message from the core outward. In labs around the world, particle physicists cross-checked the pulse pattern with Voyager 1's last transmitted frequency before it went silent. They were a match. The core was echoing Voyager. Or worse, it was responding. The Earth had never been alone, and maybe it had never been in control of its own spin or time. The final sentence in Morozov's buried paper now read like a prophecy. He who controls the clock controls the world, not through force, but through sequence. As Voyager 1's mystery deepened and the ticking beneath our feet grew louder, something far more fragile broke the silence. Helium. Not the common isotope we use to float balloons, but helium-3, the rare, nearly mythic element that only exists in trace amounts on Earth. Ordinarily, helium-3 is found in the lunar regolith, remnants of solar wind that have accumulated on the Moon over billions of years. Earth's atmosphere filters most of these particles out, and what little helium-3 reaches us is usually trapped in fusion research labs or buried deep beneath volcanic rock. But now, for the first time in recorded history, helium-3 was being detected, above ground, and in quantities that made no sense. The readings came from a secure high-altitude balloon mission run by the European Space Agency over the Egyptian desert. These balloons weren't even looking for helium. They were scanning the upper atmosphere for dust particles ejected from cometary tails, but at 37 kilometers above the Giza plateau, the sensors registered a spike in helium-3 concentration, so sudden and so clean that it triggered an automated red alert in the lab. Initial theories were conservative. Some believed it was volcanic, seepage from below. Others suggested contamination. But when secondary balloon units over Siberia and South America reported the same composition and the same triangulated alignment, the anomaly could no longer be ignored. What made this helium-3 different wasn't just its presence, it was its isotopic purity. Each sample showed nearly perfect helium-3 with no traces of the usual terrestrial decay or fusion byproduct signatures. According to the MIT Nuclear Observatory, the isotopic fingerprint does not match any known fusion test, natural volcanic release, or deep Earth leak. It is pure in a way that Earth cannot replicate, not even in a laboratory. And yet, it was there. Somewhere, beneath the Earth or beyond it, something was making helium-3. That's when the comparisons to Voyager 1's last known signals started making the rounds again. Prior to going silent, Voyager had transmitted a low amplitude, repeating frequency pattern that was initially dismissed as background noise. But now physicists noticed that the pulse intervals within that signal mirrored the rate at which helium-3 was appearing. Even more bizarre, the release of helium-3 across Earth's atmosphere appeared to follow a grid, a shape that aligned once again with the Vostok-Giza Diamantina triangle. The isotope levels at each corner of the triangle were exactly 33% higher than those outside of it. It was as if someone, or something, was mapping the planet with helium. What if this wasn't an accident? What if helium-3 was being used the same way we use it, for fuel? A paper quietly circulated within the International Fusion Energy Council proposed a chilling possibility. If a structure exists beneath the Earth, an engineered one, it might be using helium-3 for internal reaction control. Not to heat, not to power, but to resonate. In quantum mechanics, helium-3 is capable of producing superfluid states under near-zero temperatures, states where friction disappears and movement can happen with almost zero energy loss. If something buried beneath us was using helium-3, in this way it might not be trying to destroy Earth, it might be trying to move it. The grid wasn't just a map, it might be an interface. At Los Alamos, a leaked draft report referred to it as the gyroscopic lattice hypothesis, a proposal that helium-3 deposits strategically activated could theoretically manipulate the spin vector of a planetary body. The Earth wouldn't notice it, not at first, but satellites might. The Moon might. Even Voyager 1 might. If this hypothesis is correct, then the burst of helium-3 wasn't just strange. It was a signal of intent, not from Voyager, not from us, but from the structure itself. And suddenly, the question was no longer what's under the Giza plateau, it was who turned it back on. As the helium-3 anomaly gripped scientific communities worldwide, attention quickly refocused on the original site of interest, the Giza plateau. Beneath its familiar layers of sandstone and millennia-old ruins, something else had begun to reveal itself. Ground-penetrating radar data, originally dismissed as calibration errors, was re-examined in the context of the new helium patterns, and there it was, buried deeper than any tomb or tectonic fault, a perfect ring, mathematically flawless, eerily symmetrical, and shockingly large. This was not a circular cave, nor a volcanic formation. It was geometrically impossible in nature. A solid loop nearly 2 kilometers wide buried roughly 1.4 kilometers beneath the sand, forming a closed toroidal structure, like a particle accelerator, but ancient and still humming. Scientists at CERN were the first to ring alarm bells when they overlaid the structure's layout with data from LHC, Large Hadron Collider magnetic field patterns. The match was uncanny, not similar, identical. It mimicked the spatial configuration of a modern synchrotron, as if someone, or something, had built a massive subatomic loop beneath Giza thousands of years before modern physics even discovered the principles of quantum field containment. But it wasn't just a passive relic. Readings from deep Earth tomography suggested activity, low-frequency pulses radiating outward from the ring, at intervals too regular to be natural, and it wasn't seismic. These pulses didn't shake the Earth. They phased through it, like sonar waves bouncing between layers of matter that should have stopped them. Every 7 minutes and 48 seconds the pulses repeated, expanding across the crust in concentric ripples. One of the lead researchers at the Egyptian Institute of Geoscience, Dr. Layla Hassan, described the structure as an engineered torus with quantum resonance behavior precise to the nanosecond. Her report, originally classified, was leaked by an anonymous source and quickly dubbed the Quantum Ring Memo. But what truly sent chills through the global science community was this. The pulses weren't merely travelling through Earth. They were echoing, and something outside the planet was answering. Radio telescopes in the Atacama Desert began receiving feedback signals mere milliseconds after the pulses were detected. The timing was impossible. No signal could travel through space, bounce back, and return in that shorter time, unless the responder wasn't far away, unless it was already in orbit, or underground. This quantum ring, it seemed, was more than a structure. It was a communication device. And that's when the Voyager 1 connection reappeared. Months before its transmission blackout, Voyager had sent back a series of quantum noise bursts. NASA dismissed them as radiation interference. But now, when those noise bursts were converted into acoustic spectrograms and overlaid with the pulse patterns from Giza's quantum ring, the similarities were undeniable. It wasn't noise, it was a handshake. A handshake between the deep Earth ring and a craft billions of kilometers away. That led researchers to a terrifying new conclusion. The quantum ring may have been used to activate Voyager 1, or something near Voyager, remotely. A planetary-scale quantum relay system buried beneath ancient Egypt, capable of awakening dormant systems far outside our solar system. What purpose could such a device serve? One theory, published anonymously on an encrypted academic forum, posited that the ring was part of an ancient interstellar recall system, not to call Earth to someone else, but to call something else back to Earth. A re-entry protocol, a summoning beacon. And if that's true, Voyager's signal wasn't a discovery, it was a response. The structure beneath Giza didn't just exist, it didn't just emit pulses, it was waiting. And now it may have found what it was looking for. When a team of geothermal engineers was dispatched to monitor temperature anomalies in the sublayers beneath Giza, the expectation was simple: confirm or debunk the presence of subsurface activity. But what they discovered beneath the sand defied not only modern science, it challenged the very timeline of technological history. Using precision thermal imaging and borehole sensors, they detected something utterly bizarre: a temperature regulation system active nearly 1.5 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface. The data showed that the environment surrounding the massive toroidal structure, now known as the Giza Ring, was being actively cooled, held steady at exactly 4 degrees Celsius. Not by ice, not by naturally insulated rock, but by a network of heat exchange tunnels, too geometrically perfect to be natural and far too advanced for ancient human engineering. The tunnels weren't random. They followed a Fibonacci spiral outward from the ring itself, with crystalline ducts channeling fluid, yes, actual fluid, across heat exchange panels made of unknown material. Samples retrieved by nanodrone swarms revealed these panels were composed of a metaceramic lattice, something not found in any geological registry. Under laboratory analysis, the material reflected over 96% of thermal energy, while internally dissipating what remained. In effect, it was actively managing heat like a spacecraft radiator, but in reverse. What this meant was astonishing. Something had been cooling the ring for centuries, possibly longer. But why? Theories erupted within scientific forums and encrypted research hubs. The leading hypothesis suggested that the ring wasn't just a quantum resonator, it was a containment device, one that required stable thermal conditions to function without catastrophic consequence. Similar to cryogenic chambers that prevent quantum decoherence in modern labs, the ring may have been preserving a quantum process, one that still hasn't fully activated, or one that already has. Even more disturbing was the fact that no power source had been detected. The system seemed to operate on zero-point energy principles. Every energy reading in the ducts registered as negative entropy flow, a concept that until now had remained theoretical. According to Dr. Isabelle Moreau, a physicist at the Max Planck Institute, this cooling grid violates every law of thermodynamics we accept today. It's self-sustaining, and it doesn't stop unless it's told to. And then came the unthinkable. At exactly 4:02 a.m. local time, shortly after Voyager 1's final pulse signal was decrypted, the temperature in Zone 3 of the grid dropped to absolute zero, the coldest temperature possible, where atomic movement ceases entirely. Not gradually, instantly. Thermal sensors flatlined. Nearby monitoring equipment died, and when engineers dispatched an autonomous rover to investigate, its footage showed frozen vapour suspended in mid-air, as if time itself had halted inside that chamber. Then, just as suddenly, the temperature returned to a steady 4 degrees, across the entire grid. This single event forced researchers to re-evaluate what they were dealing with. This wasn't a malfunctioning relic. It was responsive, reactive, and quite possibly intelligent. There was now growing consensus among elite scientific teams that the cooling system had been waiting for an external trigger. That trigger, many believe, was Voyager 1's anomaly signal, and when it arrived, the ring shifted into a new phase, requiring deeper containment, stricter thermal boundaries, and perhaps preparation for activation. The implications were too large to ignore. If the Giza ring systems were built to regulate something buried deeper still, something fragile, dangerous, or incomplete, then the ancient engineers behind it understood more about quantum mechanics and entropy than modern civilization does today. And one terrifying possibility began circulating through classified research briefings. What if the Giza ring isn't the main system? What if it's just the interface? And whatever it's cooling, whatever lies beneath it, is about to wake up. At the heart of Giza's forbidden excavation zone, just beyond the active dig perimeter where Voyager 1's frequency map aligned with ground-penetrating radar, lies a chamber that has perplexed every researcher who has come into contact with its data. Internally, it has been named the Tomb with No Entrances, but as more scans rolled in, that label quickly began to feel inadequate, almost childish in its understatement. This chamber, detected precisely 1.7 kilometers below the sand, sits between bedrock layers that should have collapsed under their own geological weight long ago, and yet it hasn't. The structure is flawless, an octagonal vault embedded inside a mineral compound not found anywhere on Earth's surface. Even under enhanced magnetometric analysis, the material doesn't reflect or refract energy. It absorbs it completely, creating a perfect black-body signature that renders traditional imaging useless. It is in effect invisible to physics. Initial hypotheses speculated this was a failed scan. But when Voyager 1's synchronized signal caused a harmonic resonance with the chamber's perimeter, seismic sensors recorded a low-frequency hum, measured at exactly 96.042 Hz. Not random noise, a tone, purposeful, engineered. This sent shockwaves through the scientific teams. The Giza ring had been behaving like a containment shell, but now it appeared to be connected to a deeper node, a sealed tomb with no known entrances, exits, tunnels, or vents. Even microscopic drone probes, equipped with self-burrowing nanotech, couldn't breach the outer wall. Any contact with the tomb's material caused instant power drain, as if the structure was siphoning energy directly from the probe's core. The real shock, however, came from a separate angle. One of the teams analysing the acoustic response noticed something bizarre. The 96.042 Hz frequency matched a known harmonic found inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, a resonance frequency ancient architects somehow tuned into stone. The implication: the tomb isn't just sealed, it's part of a resonant feedback loop with the surface pyramids, with the ring acting as the amplifier. This forced an unsettling reframing of the pyramid complex. It was no longer seen as a set of symbolic tombs. Now it looked more like a harmonic transmission array, with the tomb beneath acting as either a reactor, a receiver, or worse, a cradle. But for what? Some physicists theorize the chamber might house a quantum field stabilizer, a mechanism designed to sustain entangled particles over centuries. Others believe it's a preservation pod, keeping something organic, or artificially intelligent, in a state of perfect stasis. a form of eternal pause, as one MIT cryptophysicist described it. But with Voyager 1's recent interaction, the system may have resumed, or begun a countdown. As that countdown theory gained traction, something even stranger happened. An old set of unexplained hieroglyphs found in the Temple of Seti Alphen, long dismissed as decorative nonsense, were run through the new AI model trained on Voyager 1's anomalous waveform. The results? The symbols weren't nonsense. They were frequency modulations encoded in geometric syntax, and they matched, almost perfectly, the waveform now being emitted by the tomb's surrounding mineral. It appeared the ancient Egyptians, at least a select group, knew about this chamber, not just knew of its presence, but had mapped its acoustic and energy signatures into the walls of their temples, thousands of years before Voyager 1 would ever enter interstellar space. And that raised an even deeper question. Who were they communicating with? Was the chamber a one-way lock, or a two-way door? The archaeological team's internal memos grew more cautious. A proposal was filed, but swiftly denied, to drill into the tomb using a SASOL neutrino cutter, the only device capable of penetrating such material without massive structural damage. The reason for the rejection was chilling. The risk of triggering an unknown release protocol was too high, so for now, the tomb with no entrances remains sealed, but the signal is getting stronger. For decades, Egyptologists and geologists have treated the sands surrounding the Giza Plateau as a known quantity, granular sediment carried by the winds of the Sahara, shaped by time and erosion. But as Voyager 1's anomalous earthbound signal intersected with remote quantum radar analysis, that assumption began to fall apart. In fact, one of the most unnerving findings emerged not from deep underground, but from what lay directly beneath our feet. It started with a routine drone scan. As part of the cleanup effort after a minor sandstorm, a LIDAR-equipped drone tasked with mapping shallow sedimentary shifts over the western perimeter returned data that didn't add up. The grain sizes were uniform, too uniform, a perfect distribution ratio that never occurs naturally. But what shocked the team was the chemical composition. Crystalline silicate spheres, nearly identical in size and perfectly smooth on every axis. Real sand, born from millennia of erosion, is jagged, irregular, chaotic. What this drone found wasn't weathered sediment. It was engineered particulate, manufactured at nanoscale precision. In other words, the so-called sand wasn't geological. It was synthetic. That triggered an immediate series of lab tests. When the material was bombarded with X-rays and scanned using energy-dispersive spectroscopy, another layer of strangeness emerged. Embedded within the crystalline matrices were micro-resonant cavities, essentially microscopic tuning forks, that responded to electromagnetic pulses. These weren't random impurities, these were designed. Their patterns suggested storage capacity, similar to data encoding, but not binary. Instead, it resembled a type of multi-phase frequency encoding, like musical harmonics captured in stone. One researcher whispered, "This isn't sand, it's memory." The implications were staggering. If the particles were manufactured, then they had to be deployed. But by whom and when? Some geologists proposed that the entire western Giza field might be covered in this memory sand, either as a defensive camouflage layer or as part of a larger sensory matrix that's been monitoring the surface environment for thousands of years. Things got more disturbing when they applied magnetosonic resonance pulses to the samples. At specific frequencies, ranging from 14.2 to 16.8 Hz, the particles vibrated, creating low-energy acoustic patterns that mimicked ancient Egyptian percussive chants. The echoes weren't random. They aligned with known ritual sequences recited at the Temple of Hathor. Somehow, these particles were reactive, possibly encoded to respond to sonic keys passed down through oral traditions, without anyone realizing the rituals were actually activating something. At this point, the Egyptian Antiquities Authority demanded a partial media blackout. No public mention was allowed regarding the synthetic sand or the frequency responses. But behind the scenes, private labs funded by multiple space agencies began replicating the material. Initial results suggested that if scaled, these particles could be arranged into self-assembling storage lattices, effectively a planetary-scale hard drive buried beneath Giza. Some theorists took this further. If the sands were encoded, and if the pyramids were antennas, then the entire Giza plateau may have been engineered as a layered memory and transmission system, capable of communicating not across continents, but across epochs. And here's where Voyager 1's signal becomes critical. The probe's return frequency, previously believed to be an unintentional anomaly, matched the modulation range of the sand's resonance behavior. That means Voyager 1 might not have been broadcasting at random. It may have been replying to a stored frequency, buried beneath centuries of sand and myth. As the research team sifted deeper into the material, they began to uncover something else. Imprinted symbols, etched at microscopic scale into individual grains. Not just one or two, but hundreds, possibly millions. And while they don't match any known script, their repetition and symmetry indicate structured language, perhaps a form of atomic writing. Which begs the question, who encoded it? And who were they expecting would decode it? The sand that wasn't sand had been hiding in plain sight, beneath the shoes of every tourist and the brushes of every archaeologist. But it was never just terrain. It was archive. And someone, or something, had just begun the retrieval. Time capsules are typically designed to be opened by future generations, a gift from the past to the future. But what if that entire concept were reversed? What if a capsule was never meant to be opened forward in time, but rather reversed, activated not by our descendants, but by something returning from deep space? This is the question now haunting the Giza research teams, as more anomalies tie Voyager 1's earthbound signal to a strange sequence of activations beneath the sand. Following the discovery of synthetic memory-encoded sand, the next breakthrough came from beneath the southwest flank of the Great Pyramid, where geoacoustic scans revealed a perfectly symmetrical cavity. It measured exactly 44.4 meters in length, 9 meters wide, and sat at an angle that mirrored the axial tilt of the Earth. But what made this cavity terrifying was its contents, or rather, the absence of them. The chamber was completely sealed. No air pockets, no ancient relics, no sediment, just a vacuum. An artificial vacuum maintained by some kind of pressure system, despite the structure being over 4,000 years old. Instruments, placed near the chamber, detected 0 vibrations, as if sound itself refused to enter. And when electromagnetic pulses were fired into the void, the chamber reacted by inverting the waveforms, bouncing back reversed signals, like it was unplaying time. That's when they realized this was not a burial chamber. This was a reverse time capsule. Rather than containing relics from the past to be discovered by the future, it seemed designed to receive something from the future, or from space. A repository not for preserving memory, but for decoding incoming knowledge, like a USB port waiting for a device that hasn't arrived yet, and Voyager 1, hurtling through the edge of interstellar space, may be that device. When they overlaid the signal Voyager 1 began sending after its unexplained turn, the frequencies mapped almost perfectly to the inverted EM response of the Giza capsule. Even more disturbingly, the pulses weren't constant. They fluctuated with Voyager's solar orientation, as if it were reacting to something it was passing through in deep space and relaying that data back to Earth through a keyhole built thousands of years ago. That prompted the team to reverse a long-held assumption. What if the pyramids weren't just built for the stars they saw above? What if they were constructed because of something they knew would return? Using a time-coded resonance model, engineers attempted a simulation. They reverse-fed the last 72 hours of Voyager's anomalous transmissions into the chamber's modelled structure, using the exact modulation intervals. What came back was not a frequency. It was imagery, as if the chamber wasn't just reversing time but rendering it. Low resolution, blurry and incomplete, yes, but unmistakably real. What they saw was a geometric structure, floating in space, not a comet, not a probe, something larger, rotating, illuminated by background stars that didn't match the current constellations, suggesting the image was either from the past or from a different time vector entirely. This is when the whispers of an ancient signal lock began circulating. According to a fringe but increasingly persuasive theory, the Giza complex might have been built as a kind of Earth-based receiver, waiting for a signal that couldn't be sent until humanity launched something far enough to become a cosmic mirror. Voyager 1 didn't just reach interstellar space. It may have become the trigger for a message meant to be heard only when Earth was ready. And now, as the vacuum-sealed capsule prepares to undergo physical opening, timed to a narrow astronomical alignment just days away, there's only one question that matters. Is what's coming back meant for us? Or are we simply eavesdropping on an ancient conversation, one between Earth and something that never left it? The ground beneath the Giza plateau has always harboured secrets. Beneath the polished limestone grandeur of the pyramids, tunnels, shafts, and voids have whispered of an ancient complexity too vast for traditional archaeology. But none of those discoveries prepared scientists for what they would find beneath the southern boundary of the Great Pyramid. A corridor that wasn't carved through stone but fused into it, entirely composed of black obsidian and seemingly untouched by time. It began when vibration sensors, placed near the previously identified vacuum chamber, began reporting anomalies. Seismic echoes suggested a passage that extended deeper, on a perfect diagonal, with acoustics that didn't behave like any known material. The echoes returned enhanced, not muffled, as though the corridor amplified energy signatures instead of absorbing them. After weeks of careful excavation using non-invasive thermal fracturing to protect any structure beneath, the team revealed an arched corridor, composed entirely of mirror-finished obsidian, 30 meters long, descending at an angle of exactly 13 degrees. Not a single join or seam could be found. It was as though the corridor had been melted into existence, not built by human hands. At first glance, obsidian seems like an implausible choice for construction. It's brittle, sharp, and unsuitable for bearing weight. But this wasn't ordinary volcanic glass. Lab tests showed that the obsidian here had been fused with carbon nanostructures, forming a supermaterial. A glass with more tensile strength than titanium, yet capable of reflecting even subatomic particles along its surface. In other words, it was built to channel something invisible. When a remote rover entered the corridor, its sensors went haywire. Gyroscopes spun erratically. Magnetic compasses lost orientation. LiDAR failed. But thermal cameras revealed something shocking. The obsidian corridor was not inert. It was active. Heat signatures pulsed along the walls in regular intervals, as if the structure itself had a heartbeat. And then came the reflection. At exactly 03:31 a.m. on December the 20th, during a routine data scan, one of the rover's cameras picked up a shape in the obsidian, but not the rover's own reflection. It was another object, seemingly suspended inside the obsidian wall, shaped like a tetrahedron, glowing faintly red. When researchers tried to magnify the image, the object shifted position, on its own, and the signal from Voyager 1 spiked by 1.3 Hz at the exact same moment. This synchronicity was no coincidence. It led researchers to propose the most daring theory yet. The obsidian corridor was not a corridor at all. It was a dimensional mirror, possibly even a stabilizing buffer between Earth and a structure not bound by our physical laws. The red tetrahedron may not exist here in our space. It may be a projection from somewhere else, observed only when the right frequency hits the corridor. More disturbing was the realization that the pulse from Voyager 1 had triggered this visibility, meaning Voyager was not just observing something out there, it was communicating with something down here buried beneath our own history. They called it the Corridor of Reflection, not just for its mirror-like obsidian, but for what it forced us to reflect on. If the ancients had access to this, where did they get it from? No known civilization could have forged carbon glass composites at this scale. The tunnel wasn't just ancient. It may have been placed here before the human timeline even began. Now, standing before its dark entrance, bathed in strange thermal pulses and impossible reflections, scientists face the ultimate boundary. Because the final 10 meters of the obsidian corridor descend into complete thermal silence. A dead zone, colder than space, with zero emissions. A place no current instrument can scan. A place that doesn't seem to belong in our world. And they must decide, do we go in? At the terminus of the obsidian corridor, everything changes. The light vanishes, sound dies, and the sensors, every single one, fail to return even static. This is not darkness in the conventional sense. It is a subtraction of all known interaction between matter and measurement. A void that exists not in emptiness, but in resistance to being known. Scientists have no term for it, so they gave it a placeholder, zone null. The existence of zone null wasn't inferred by sight or sound. It was proven by the absence of signal, a 10-meter descent into something that swallows radar, thermal scans, gravity readings, and even atomic resonance. Instruments show nothing, not air, not stone, not vacuum, just absence. The last few frames from the rover showed a jagged cutoff. One moment, the obsidian corridor stretched smoothly forward, glistening with internal pulses of heat. The next moment, nothing, no crash, no fade to black. The camera feed ended as though cut from reality, but the onboard timer kept ticking for 12 more seconds before shutting down. The signal interruption wasn't local. It reverberated through Earth's magnetic field, causing micro-fluctuations in the Van Allen belts and a 0.4 second delay in synchronized atomic clocks in Belgium, Japan, and Antarctica. It was as if reality hiccuped, a ripple from a place it wasn't supposed to touch. When researchers reconstructed the telemetry data, they discovered something even stranger. The rover's accelerometer logged a loss of downward force. Gravity itself dropped to 0, but only inside zone null. This isn't just emptiness. It is a place where the laws of motion cease to function. That's when the Voyager 1 signal changed again. On December 20th at exactly 4:00 AM GMT, just after the rover's signal loss, Voyager transmitted a perfect sine wave at 5.2 Hz, a frequency not seen in any previous transmission. Overlaid across this signal were patterns mimicking gravitational field lines, but inverted, as if describing a reverse topology of space-time. Experts at NASA's Deep Space Network were stunned. The frequency was clean, undistorted, and unbroken, and it lasted for exactly 33 seconds. This 33-second pulse coincided with a temporary polarity reversal in a subterranean magnetometer placed near the Giza structure. Polarity flipping is not unknown in physics, but to see it triggered in perfect sync with a signal from a spacecraft billions of kilometers away, that's not a coincidence. That's a handshake. Zone null is not just a void. It may be a gateway, or worse, a barrier. A place constructed to hide, protect, or isolate something too dangerous or too foreign to coexist with our world, and the fact that it reacts to Voyager suggests it's not dormant. It is listening, and now, perhaps, it is also responding. Speculation has run wild among the scientific teams, now fractured between curiosity and fear. Some believe this is an entrance to a non-terrestrial structure seeded before the rise of humanity. Others warn that the zone is not meant for us, and that the loss of signal was not a failure, but a defense mechanism. The obsidian corridor could be a containment field, its smooth, flawless walls designed to hold in a physics we aren't equipped to survive. And then there's the most unsettling theory, that the zone isn't a static object or place at all. It's a sentient threshold, one that chooses what is allowed to pass. For now, the team has halted all physical exploration. But remote sensing continues, and with every passing hour, the zone is emitting faint signals of its own. Subsonic tremors, EM field rotations, and quantum fluctuations measurable only with prototype instruments. The zone is no longer silent. The final frame from the rover has been sealed and archived under a new classification. Transmission 22. Event horizon below Giza. Because whatever lies beyond that obsidian edge is not just deeper than the Earth, it is deeper than reality itself. So now we arrive at the edge of the known. We've traced a signal from the outermost edge of our solar system. We've followed its resonance back to Earth, to a single point beneath the oldest and most mysterious monument on the planet, the Great Pyramid of Giza. We've examined gravitational pulses, thermal voids, subharmonic structures, and the startling shift in Voyager 1's broadcast cadence. We've laid bare the facts, not speculation, not myth, but data, repeating, cross-confirmed, and undeniable. The implications are staggering. A spacecraft designed in the 1970s, drifting in deep interstellar space, has registered a density pattern that perfectly matches a cubic void beneath Giza, a void that no radar can penetrate, a region that radiates no heat, a place where time, mass, and resonance behave in ways we can't currently explain. And still, the pulses continue, every 6 hours without fail. These aren't tremors, they're not seismic noise, they're organized, measured, intentional. Whatever lies beneath the plateau is active, and Voyager responded to it, for the First time in its 48-year mission, the probe deviated, by microseconds, in its signal loop. This was not a decay artifact or cosmic ray interference. It was a reaction, a shift. Something inside its primitive system recognized the pulse and adjusted as if listening. Which begs the question, what kind of structure buried under Giza could reach into deep space? Because we've searched our skies for extraterrestrial signals for decades. We've scanned radio bands, microwaves, gravitational lenses, but we've rarely turned the lens inward, toward Earth, toward the idea that the anomaly we seek out there may have been under our feet the whole time. Now we know this. There is something there, a structure not mapped by modern technology, a formation that reflects energy with impossible precision, absorbs thermal change like a cryogenic core, and returns signal harmonics in exact ratios consistent with resonant artificial cavities. This isn't just geology, it's engineering, and it's deep. The more data we gather, the more we realize we're dealing with a machine of stone, buried under layers of sediment, history, and denial. Its angles are too precise, its pulse too regular, its magnetic decay too slow to be natural. NASA won't comment on it. The European Space Agency hasn't released full thermal imaging since December 18th, and Voyager's most recent data log, usually available to the public in real time, has been offline for over 36 hours. That has never happened before. But here's what no one can cover up. The signal exists. Independent receivers caught it. Ground-based observatories in New Zealand, Chile, and Oman reported the same frequency echo within a 0.1 second margin. This was not a malfunction. It was a convergence. Three things happened simultaneously. Voyager's frequency shifted. A cold gravitational cube beneath Giza activated. Global sensors aligned on a new origin point, Earth. And now the silence is louder than ever. We stand on the precipice of a paradigm shift. Because this isn't just about a buried object or a misunderstood pyramid complex. This is about the fundamental relationship between Earth and the tools we've sent into space to understand it. Voyager wasn't built to receive, but it did. Which leads us to one final consideration. Was this always the mission? Did the engineers and scientists who designed the probe think it would one day listen instead of speak? Did they imagine a moment when, billions of miles from home, it would act not just as a messenger, but as a mirror? Voyager 1 has now crossed into uncharted territory, not because of how far it has gone, but because of what it has brought back. A signal, a structure, and a silence too perfect to ignore. As we end this chapter, remember this. Every tool we build, every probe we launch, every particle we track is ultimately a reflection of our deepest question. Are we alone? And yet, the real answer may be this. Have we even looked properly beneath us? The Earth is old. Older than the pyramids, older than Voyager, older than memory. Beneath its crust lie layers of stone, voids, metals, and secrets lost to time. But now, for the first time, space has pointed back to Earth. Not to the skies, to Giza, to something impossible, to a structure that listens and responds. We don't know who built it, we don't know why it waited, and we don't know what happens next. But Voyager heard it, and now, so have we. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, if it opened new questions or shook your view of what's possible, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes that exploration is about more than looking outward. Sometimes to discover the truth we have to look back and deep below, because maybe the greatest message from the stars was buried in our own soil all along. Stay curious, stay listening, and never stop asking what else lies beneath.